Hello and welcome to the Friday, March 12th, 2021, pre-St. Paddy's Day edition of Iowa Politics. This week, elephants on parade, securing elections, and relief is on the way. Hi, I'm James Lynch with the Cedar Falls Gazette. With me today are Tom Barton of the Quad City Times. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, James.
Amie Rivers of the Waterloo-Cedar Falls Courier. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, James.
And Gazette opinion editor Todd Dorman. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning.
You can find us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to On Iowa Politics wherever you find your podcast. First up, elephants on parade. We're more than 1,000 days from the 2024 First in the Nation Iowa caucuses, and already some Republicans are headed our way. Perhaps they heard about our unseasonably warm weather, not due to climate change, mind you, and are making a quick spring break vacation in Iowa. Later this month, the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will visit Iowa to help the party and advocate for conservatives. Interestingly, he capitalized conservatives. I guess they're a party now. Florida Senator Rick Scott will be in Iowa April 1st, April Fool's Day. Make of that what you will, for a Cedar Rapids fundraiser with Senator Joni Ernst and special guest Ashley Hinson. And while in Iowa, perhaps Scott will plead with Senator Chuck Grassley not to retire so Republicans don't have to have an open seat race here in 2022. I think what this tells us, Todd, is that Iowa still matters.
Sure, and I would note that I edit letters to the editors, so I've learned that you can capitalize any word you want to capitalize. So
Yes.
There you go. Yeah, at least on the Republican side it does, and the Democrats are still trying to figure out whether Iowa's going to matter. But it's the other, of course, thing that we need to learn about that will definitely matter is what is Donald Trump going to do, because all of the way too ridiculously early polls show him as still being the heavy Republican favorite should he decide to run again in 2024. But it doesn't hurt for Rick Scott and Pompeo and these folks to come here and get their names in the newspaper and raise some money for Republicans and give a speech and fire up the troops. So yeah, I mean this is what happens. That you don't get too far away from one election before the next one starts. So here we go.
Who's going to be next? I'm surprised that Marco Rubio hasn't been here. Anyone have some favorites of who will be coming to Iowa over this summer? I mean, I can't think of a good reason, really. I mean, there's no elections this year, but somebody will probably want to raise funds for.
I wouldn't be surprised if you see Nikki Haley.
Sure.
Right.
Haley.
Yeah, that'd be my guess too.
Ron DeSantis might decide to leave hot, muggy Florida for a cooler climate sometime this summer.
Well, he could come in August to the state fair and it'd be hot and muggy then.
Yeah.
And feel at home. Yeah.
He could come and leaf peep, in
Yeah,
the fall,
there is.
something like that.
Yeah.
Check with your local Iowa travel agent for more details.
Pompeo has been here before. He was the last time I think was in July of 2020 to speak at the Family Leader Summit, which is not a bad speaking engagement for conservatives, small c or capital C. He was on the agenda with the My Pillow guy, Mike, what's his name, Liddell. So he was in good company there. The My Pillow guy, I guess, is thinking about running for governor of Minnesota now. Should be an interesting campaign. And as far as Scott, I don't know that he's been to Iowa before this, but I guess we have to consider any of these folks who come to Iowa as 2024ers, maybe potential GOP presidential candidates. Of course, Republicans did well here in 2020, picked up 2 congressional seats, held a 3rd, and defended the U.S. Senate seat. However, in 2020, it also appeared that the electoral map is tightening in many parts of the country. Amy, does that make Iowa more attractive? Not that we're not already attractive, and more necessary for Republicans going into the midterms when they hope to not only, I guess, hold their own, but capture the U.S. House.
Maybe. I think it'll probably depend on a lot of things. Also, if Cindy
Did we lose
Ackley
Amie?
decides to run for Senate, which she apparently hasn't
it looks
ruled
like it.
out. Oh, can you not hear
I
me?
don't see her anymore.
Yeah.
Oh no.
She disappeared.
Nobody can hear me. Ugh. How come this works from home and not from the office?
Does she know she disappeared? So
Yes, I can hear you. I reloaded because you guys couldn't hear me. I could hear you fine.
Okay, well, that's unfortunate.
We start from that.
Oh, wait. There she is.
She's back. She's back. Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Okay.
All
I
right.
couldn't
So,
hear you or see you. So
yeah. Yeah, I will start leading into that question. So in 3, 2, 1, Republicans, of course, did well in Iowa in 2020. They picked up 2 congressional seats and held a third, defended a U.S. Senate seat. However, in 2020, it also appeared that the electoral map is tightening in many parts of the country. Amie, does this make Iowa more attractive?
Is be important for
not attractive, in the country, and more necessary for Republicans going into the 2020 midterms as they hope to hold their own
10 seats,
and
is it to
capture the
take it back?
US
So
House.
yeah, definitely is going to be tight. And I think Iowa could be a good breeding ground for that. It has been going a little bit more red in recent years. So I think if you're a Republican consultant, you're thinking you've got some pickup opportunities here. You've really only got the one pickup opportunity, but it's entirely possible that they could get it. I know that Axne has been asked about if she's going to run for Senate and hasn't ruled it out. So that's an interesting thing in the mix as well. If they can't get somebody in that seat, to do just as well, that could really be an opportunity for Republicans. Hmm.
Right, and some people are suggesting she run for governor, so she's got a lot of options there. Of course, before Republicans can pick up that fourth Iowa U.S. House seat, they need to hang on to the second district seat that's provisionally held by Marionette Miller Meeks. It's been a while since we talked about that Iowa second district race and Democrat Rita Hart's challenge to Miller Meeks being seated in Congress. Tom, what's new in that situation?
The Committee on House Administration took a procedural step on Wednesday to begin delving into the merits of Democrat Rita Hart's election challenge in that congressional district. The committee voted 6-3 along party lines, with Democrats in favor, Republicans opposed, to postpone a decision on Iowa Republican U.S. Representative Marionette Miller Meeks' motion to dismiss Hart's election contest, challenging the outcome in the Iowa race. It was the closest federal race in the country during the 2020 election cycle, and among the closest U.S. congressional races in history, separated by a mere 6 votes out of roughly 400,000 cast, for a margin of less than 1/6 of 1%. As you noted, Miller Meeks was provisionally seated as a new member of Congress after a bipartisan panel of state officials certified the election results in November. She filed a motion to dismiss the case, arguing that more than a century of precedent required Hart to exhaust all legal remedies at the state level before taking her case to Congress. House Democrats, however, dismissed that argument, reiterating that the 1969 law under which Hart is challenging the election outcome doesn't require exhausting all state legal challenges, and that the House is the final arbiter of elections of its members and would not have been bound by any state court rulings, even if Hart had pursued her case in Iowa court. So now the committee appears on track to give Iowa's second congressional district race a fuller airing. The committee chairwoman, U.S. Representative Zoe Lofgren, a Democrat from California, said Congress has an obligation to review Hart's claims that some lawfully cast ballots were not counted. Hart's campaign has identified 22 ballots it claims were legally cast but not counted due to election worker error, and that had those 22 ballots been tallied, that Hart of Wheatland would have won by 9 votes. The committee chairwoman, Zoe Lofgren, said that Hart, quote, has raised specific, credible allegations that enough validly cast ballots were wrongly excluded and enough to potentially reserve the election outcome. She went on to say that, quote, today, none of us can state with confidence who actually won this election, and that it is the solemn responsibility of the committee to, quote, find the facts, to search for truth, and act accordingly without partisan bias. She said that she plans to consult with the ranking member of the committee, Republican U.S. Representative Rodney Davis of Illinois, to send both Miller Meeks and Hart a set of identical questions about the specific procedures, legal principles, timelines they believe should control the course of the case, and then once returned, make their answers available for public review. Miller Meeks' attorney and her legal said that her legal team will prepare and file an answer to Hart's notice of contest. Davis, the ranking member, argued that the committee should not be moving forward with overturning our colleague's state certified election. He said it would be one of the, quote, greatest mistakes this House makes, where the candidates sidestep the courts and instead turn to partisan political process in the House because they know that they couldn't win any other way.
There you have it. They don't seem to be moving with a lot of speed on this. Could Democrats just kind of keep this going until, say, mid 2022, and then flip the script, make Hart the incumbent going into the November elections?
Theoretically, I mean, there is no deadline for the House to resolve Hart's election contest, but I don't foresee that scenario playing out. It would be a bold and politically dicey move for Democrats to make, and I don't think that they would want the blowback that would come from that after what we witnessed with the deadly January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol by supporters of former President Donald Trump, to have the 2020 Electoral College results overturned by Congress. At this point, I just don't see the political appetite among Democrats to do that, some of whom have already said that they're hesitant to vote on the House floor to overturn the state's certified election results.
Yeah, and I think we've touched on this before, but it just seems like, given all the controversy over the 2020 election, Donald Trump's supposed victory, it kind of looks like it would be bad optics, as they say in politics, for Democrats to throw out the results of an election. Although, I mean, obviously, Hart is making the case that it should be thrown out. So, I mean, I guess you can certainly argue this one both ways. But I do kind of get the impression that they're throwing this back and forth, keeping the issue alive, but it could be one that there never is any final action. I mean, that they may never reach resolution until the 2022 election, and let that solve the question.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like both parties are kind of posturing without any plan or intent to do anything. However, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, in responding to a reporter's question during a recent press conference, said that, of course, there's a scenario where the state certified election results are overturned and Miller Meeks is unseated. Pelosi, though, went on to say that, quote, I respect the work of the committee, and said that we'll see where that takes us. But again, said that there could be a scenario to that extent. We'll see. But I guess at this point, I don't know if there's a lot of appetite among House Democrats to do that at this point. I think that they just kind of want to make sure that it's not dismissed out of hand, and can at least say that we gave this a full airing. But again, right now, I just see both parties posturing back and forth without really a plan or urgency to want to act on this.
Maybe they could share a seat or do it, on alternating weeks or whatever. Amy, while it looks like Republicans are following the usual pattern of candidates making non-campaign visits to Iowa, the Democratic caucuses remain at risk. not only have some of the party's national leaders called into question the future of the kickoff event in the nomination process, and Nevada Democrats are mounting a challenge by calling for a primary in January. But some Iowa Democrats are saying it's time to say goodbye to the caucuses. Johnson County Democrats recently opened the door by voting to call for a primary.
Possible. I think, obviously,
should we
Johnson
expect
County is
other
always an
county
outlier
Democratic
in the
parties to
state,
follow
but
suit?
it obviously is a big Democratic
Once the door is
stronghold.
open,
If
everybody
you've got
wants to
other
get
big
through there.
Democratic strongholds like Scott County, like Blackhawk County, like Polk County following suit, you really could start to see a groundswell. But I don't know. I think, there's just so many parts that Iowa can't control that the parties can't control, right? So if you go to a primary, you've got New Hampshire that's going to be like, well, then you're not going first anymore, and then what does that mean? Do the parties really care about that? There's been some polling to suggest that maybe Iowans don't care as much about the first in the nation caucus as we honestly think that they do, and that they'd be fine going a little bit later in the process. Exactly. Yeah, but I think, eventually this is really going to change. Is this the thing that makes it change? Maybe not.
As much as reporters care about it? Well, following caucuses, there are elections, and updating election laws to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat seems to be an annual exercise for the Iowa legislature, this year being no exception. Bearing down on a funnel deadline, Statehouse Republicans chose to spend their time and energy sending more election restrictions to Governor Kim Reynolds, who seemed excited to sign that bill. Todd, should the latest bill be called the posthumous Trump Second Term Memorial Act?
Well, it sure seems like, from what we heard on the floor of at least especially the Senate, that the president's contention, or the former president, sorry, his contention that
he's still president, right?
Well, his releases say the 45th president of the United States, but we do have a 46th. So, just whoever you want your president to be, just go ahead and pick one. But this argument made in favor of more voting restrictions was, for some, tied to the idea that the presidential election was stolen, and we've heard a lot of this. Lots of people feel that the election was rigged or was not done right, so we have to put more restrictions on. So, this is like so many things we've seen this legislative session. It's clear that Trump may have left the White House, but his ideas are still alive and well in the State House.
The legacy lives on. Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, I was just going to throw something in there. I find it interesting that Republicans talk about we need these changes because we need to ensure integrity and confidence in the election process. But then the biggest issue that we had in Iowa with elections was the recount process in the Iowa 2nd Congressional District. And none of this would address the issues that have been raised with that recount process, that that you didn't have a uniform process from county to county. Some counties did hand recounts, some only did machine recounts, some did a hybrid version of both. You've got Democrats in Rita Hart's campaign arguing that you had thousands of ballots that weren't reviewed, for voter intent. That you had undervotes, overvotes, that you couldn't check for the voter intent there. It seems odd to me that we talk about Republicans talk about election integrity, but it seems like one of the biggest issues that raises questions about the integrity of the election or the recount process, and nothing in this bill would address that.
There's been some talk that they will address that in a separate bill, but I haven't seen anything that would do that. And it does. I think you raise a good point that it's not the pre-filled absentee ballot request forms that make people question the election results. It's that if I vote in one county, my ballot might be counted differently than the ballots cast in the next county. It varies from state to state. Supposedly, what is it, HR1 bill in Congress would federalize these, congressional races or elections and eliminate that. Although I'm somewhat skeptical of that, and so to me, that's always more of a question.
I like that they're closing an
how
hour
are
earlier.
the ballots
I'll just say it.
handled? How are they counted? What's counted? I'm not as concerned about what time the polls open or close, or what day of the week. But
that's right. Get to go home earlier.
Yeah, I'm all for that. Self-interest. Yep. Well, in all of our interest, it only took 50 days for President Joe Biden to rescue America.
Yes.
This week, he signed the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that will send relief checks to Americans as soon as this weekend. Perhaps while you're listening to this podcast, your check will be in the mail. It also will extend $300 emergency unemployment benefits into early September, expand tax credits for children, child care, and family leave, and support renters, feeding programs, and people's utility bills. Polls have shown this plan to be popular with Americans 60 to more than 70%, according to most polls, including more than 40% of Republicans. And yet the plan was approved without Republican support.
They
Amy,
liked
heard
the
from Chuck
rescuing
Grassley
part
and,
that they
and First
agreed with.
District
So like
Rep. Ashley
they're saying,
Hinson
okay,
this
we
week.
like the pandemic parts, and
Don't
they
read the
define the
polls?
pandemic
What
parts
was it
very
they
specifically
didn't like about
as
rescuing America?
testing, vaccination, and then a little more broadly, money to schools and hospitals and that sort of thing. What they didn't like was the $350 billion that's going to states, counties, and local municipalities. They figure that's too broad and not really targeted relief that they were looking for. And then they just didn't like that, these earmarks were sort of added in, and a lot of them got taken out. So you had obviously the $15 minimum wage got taken out, but then also, the Republicans made a lot of hay over Nancy Pelosi's Silicon Valley subway system, and the fact that, money was going to California, and New York, whereas California has something like a $15 billion budget surplus right now, and New York, is mired in debt, and both of those were really untenable to Republicans. They were saying, well, Iowa is balancing our budget. We have a surplus. We're doing fine. So you're really just sort of seeing, I think, Republicans sort of hewing back from the Trump years when spending wasn't really talked about, and they're talking about spending again. They know it's a big issue, and now that Trump is not in office, they're sort of able to talk about that again. So I think you're really going to see a lot more. Let's try to rein in the spending talk. So that was their big issue.
Tom, has the die been cast here that, as we said, no Iowa Republicans supported the relief package. Third District Democrat Cindy Axne did support it. But going forward on major pieces of legislation, is everything going to be a party line vote in Congress now?
I'm afraid that's probably what we're going to see. I mean, as Amy pointed out in detail with the stimulus package. I mean, I think unfortunately, kind of that writing is on the wall, and this is kind of the new normal now, and what we're going to see going forward.
And Todd, I mean, it comes as no surprise that a big piece of legislation like this is loaded up with things that are not directly related to COVID relief, and both parties do this. And it almost seems like it's part of a way to, you write a bill, it's American Rescue Plan, but we're also rescuing a San Francisco subway. So you almost guarantee that the other party won't support it. And so these things, it makes it easier to become a campaign issue. Republicans oppose relief. Democrats are all for San Francisco subways. These make great campaign ads, don't they?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Silicon Subway. I mean, it's alliterative, so it's got to make a good campaign ad. Well, it's ironic. A lot of these guys that are complaining about that are writing, government subsidized mass transit every day to get to the Capitol. And but apparently they can't have that in San Fran because you know about San Francisco. So yeah, I mean, and actually, you know, Senator Ernst and others have sort of started this war on the idea of bringing earmarks back, but you know, these public works projects. I mean, Cedar Rapids had to wait 10 years to get its federal funding for a flood wall. If there had been earmarks, it would already be built as we sit here now. I mean, it would have been funded, you know, just not long after the flood, probably. So, you know, sometimes earmarks are for stuff that doesn't deserve it, and then other times it's, you know, worthwhile projects that just get gummed up in the bureaucracy, and there's no one in Congress now that can you know, cut through the red tape.
Well, speaking of deserving, Todd, the Biden bonus checks will begin arriving just as March Madness gets underway. Any thoughts on how you will spend that check?
That's right.
Oh, you know, beer and hot wings, I guess, during the tournament would be, you know, that's a lot, I realize, but I mean, if Iowa goes deep, I mean, that's, you know, it's gonna be costly. So
Hi, I'd like to place a $1,400 order. Beer, hot wings, pizza.
Well, I just give them the $1,400 and then just keep ordering throughout
There
the
you
month until it's gone.
Just start a tab.
Oh, I'm sure it will go to something very worthwhile, home improvement or something.
There you go. There you go. Well, that's it for this edition of On Iowa Politics. If you enjoyed the podcast, tell a friend and subscribe to us wherever you find your podcast. Send fan mail to podcast@thegazette.com. And you can find us on the homepages of the Quad City Times, Sioux City Journal, Muscatine Journal, Mason City Globe Gazette, Waterloo-Cedar Falls Courier, and the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Item 9 and the Mad Hatters will take us out. If you know an Iowa band or musician who should be on our show, send us a sound file and subscribe to On Iowa Politics on iTunes and Stitcher. For Amy, Tom, Todd, and our producer, Stephen, I'm James Lynch. Thanks for listening. Stay well.